Hi, Telford. Okay. No. Hi there.
Hi. It's Topher.
Is this Topher? Hi, Topher.
Yeah.
How are you?
Wonderful. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
I'm good.
Is there a Kimberly and a Sharon on the computer?
I see their name, but when I got in, it said I'm only the third person.
I know, it's weird. Maybe they're just hiding.
Someone else on the call?
They could just be on the computer. They could just be on the computer and not, because that won't show up on the phone. Sharon, I think, waved. Hi, Sharon. All right, we've got 10 minutes. Hi there.
Hello?
Hi.
Are you ready for a webinar?
We are ready. Are you?
I'm getting there. I've got to pull up the presentation on my screen still.
Okay. Well, we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
If any of you can't pull up the PowerPoint, let us know and we can put it up on the website or email it out. In fact, I will create a PDF version right now, send it to Topher.
Yeah.
Maybe you can put up on the website.
Okay. We can definitely do that.
We have had some issues in the past. Maybe we should just preclude them. Uh-oh. All right, Topher, I'm going to send it back to you. Send it to you as a PDF.
Okay, thank you.
That way, something goes wonky, people can go online. Almost there, folks. All right, it is noon. Christopher, you want to do any introductions? Go.
Yeah, it's just Tony will not be on the call, so it's just you and I.
Okay.
For those of you on the call, my name is Topher. I am the program assistant for the Joint Special Populations Advisory Committee.
Okay. And obviously you all know something about the advisory committee. Here is Tonette, who is the program coordinator on the one side, and my little blurb on the other side. That's what I look like. And for the first time ever, I'm going with video, so it doesn't really show up very much. But hey, what the heck. I thought I would do it anyway. Try it out. So I'd like to encourage all of you to speak up, ask questions, make comments. Workshops are certainly more effective when we all participate. And if you are only online and don't have phone, then please feel free to type something into the chat room. And Topher is going to help me keep an eye on that. So Topher, if somebody comes up with a question and I don't see it, please break in at an appropriate time. Okay, so truly this is just like a regular workshop if we were in person. We just can't see each other. All right. So the Special Populations Advisory Committee has been around for decades, and our goal is to promote equity and success in all programs, but particularly those in CTE, and particularly those who are students that are facing barriers to education. We do that through professional development, like what we're doing today. We also have a conference and online resources, so on and so forth. We promote instructional strategies that we find throughout our professional lives and going to conferences, things like that. And we put those all into the news you can use frequently if we don't send them out. And then we have resources online, pretty extensive amounts. Oh, look, I did it twice. It's so important. Okay, we're just going to skip that one. So we have brochures that talk about CTE in general, special populations in general. We also have a series of e-seminars. I think there are 6, and they are all less than 15 minutes. And they range from topics, for instance, to students who are non-traditional by gender, to soft skills that students need to learn, to how to use counseling more effectively for career tech ed and special population students, things like that. So they're really great. They're on YouTube, and they're wonderful to show. Some of them are really great to show to students. For instance, the one about internal barriers, which really are easy to reduce or eliminate, even in some cases, once we know about it. So stereotype threat or things like that. Once a student knows about it, they can't really unknow it, and it's really helpful. And of course, links and opportunities for professional development, such as this. Here is a little bit of information about our next conference, which is November 30th and December 1st. In Sacramento, California at the Holiday Inn again. Probably our last one because we're outgrowing it, but that's okay. It's a good problem to have. And materials and information will go up as soon as we get it and confirm it. So as an organization, we also work with the Special Populations Collaborative through the California Community Colleges. We are a joint group between K-12 Community College and Adult Education. And this is focused primarily on the community colleges. They have a whole series of brochures. I call them cheat sheets on how to help students from special populations or limited English proficient or non-traditional, or they have a new one up there from STEM to STEAM, things like that. So they just are continually doing research and looking at techniques and strategies that have shown strong efficacy out in the field. So here's their website, and Lori Harrison is the person who you would want to contact through there if you need help. Okay, so jumping straight into millennials. So some of the dates are a little bit wonky. Some people say it's the date 82 to 2000, a little bit different. So we might see different dates, but I chose these because they were the most often, and also it doesn't really matter. They're just a different kind of person. They are, by and large, the most diverse generation that we've had to choose because For one thing, because it spans such a large age range from 17 to 35 or 40, and then all the way also they're just really different than what we're used to within the group. They're different. So I think that I added a bunch of transitions. I do not think they're going to show up. So if you're following along on a PowerPoint on your own, you might need to click more than once on some of these. So there we go. Okay. So millennial assumptions. For the millennials, computers are not technology. So when they say, you know, use technology in the classrooms, what have you, really that doesn't really include a computer, because most students have a computer in their pocket, much less a laptop or a desktop, and they grow up with it. However, the caution at the bottom says depends on the students. It depends on where they are, who they are, what socioeconomic group they're from, so on and so forth. And of course, this holds true for all strategies, but particularly the assumptions that we make surrounding electronics and students' comfort level with electronics can get pretty divergent. The second thing is reality is no longer real, and that took to wrap my head around. And I think that in today's world, we really see this a lot with the whole different news agencies reporting different things, photographs being able to be manipulated really easily through Photoshop, things like that. And so there's a little bit more skepticism about what is going on. Certainly, hands-on is significantly more important than book knowledge to this group of folks. And primarily that's because it all changes really rapidly. If you start, I mean, obviously in math, the algebraic equations, they're kind of staying the same. But aside from that, everything is changing really rapidly. However we feel about multitasking, it is a way of life. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but that really can complicate things a lot by virtue of the science behind it. There's a low tolerance for delays within millennial students, and that stems from the fact that they do have a computer in their pocket. I remember when I was a kid, and this is dating myself a lot, but my parents, when I was about, I don't know, maybe 8, got the World Book Britannica. Anyone remember those? And then we had the yearbooks. Every year we would get a yearbook that updated all of the material that was under the topic. And so I would go out and I'd get it, and then I'd have to get the yearbook, and then I'd have to find other resources. That's not the way it is anymore, and so there's a relevancy and an immediacy, a demand for immediacy that is new and pretty profound, actually. And then the final point here that I'm going to just throw out there is that with all of the open source materials that are on the web, even in textbooks, I was going to say WikiLeaks, but the Wikipedia, consumer and creator is really a boring thing. And I think that's making it particularly hard in educational settings because students don't have the necessary, particularly younger ones, don't have a really strong, clear idea about plagiarism and how this is impacted with that, because they don't see it in the same venue that those of us who are a little bit older grew up with, and it was reinforced repeatedly, at least in my world. Okay, so in addition to all of what we were just talking about, the millennials are facing something that we didn't face, that other generations have not faced, and that is such a rapidly changing workforce. It's changing in both within occupations literally just disappearing. They're no longer hiring because the jobs literally aren't there. New technologies are taking over tasks and jobs that had been done by humans before. And then, of course, the scourge of outsourcing. And then, coupled with that, are the fact that they really, there's signs everywhere. I was walking through an airport recently, I think it was in Dallas, and there was this giant billboard across the wall that says, I think it said 40% of all jobs have not been created that will be that our students will be working in the next 30 years. And that's a little bit harder to make life plans that way, and to create the life that we want as well as the balance that we need in our world. So millennials are up against some hardships, and they're facing a very changing world. So I started with 5 R's of teaching millennials, and you'll see the research. I didn't put their actual citations because sometimes they're 30 lines long, so I made Google shorter URLs for them. But the content must be relevant, and I think it really needs to be relevant to what's happening in their world today as much as possible. And of course, that's really different if you're in Fresno versus San Francisco. There could be really different current things happening. I was working with a student some time ago, and he was extremely smart and failing pretty much every class that he was enrolled in. And so we set up a meeting with the student. He was working with the teachers, and he's like, I'm just not interested in history. I'm not interested in all of this. And they're like, well, what are you interested in? And he said, I just want to save the world. That's it. I just want to go out there and clean up the actual planet, the environment with which we're working, that we're living. And so the school made a policy shift for that one student that said, okay, if we're studying history during the during the 60s, you go in and find out what impact did this period of time have on the environment. So they allow that student to be really successful and to find success by letting him not skip the history lessons, but really analyze what was it that made it relevant to him and to what he's interested in today. I thought that was a really brilliant way, and he ended up graduating from high school, not with honors because he had a whole lot of bad grades before, but still graduated, which was very much in question in the beginning. When students are faced with policies, that student, again, turning in homework did not seem reasonable to him, did not understand why that mattered to him, why doing 70 math problems was of any possible rationale for him, would show any positive outcome. And once the policy and the procedures were explained to him and they provided a rationale for him, he was much more willing, not certainly all the time by any stretch of the imagination, but he was more willing to follow along with it and to do those 70 math problems. Certainly didn't do it always, but so the next point is the millennial students that the research shows, and I actually hosted a millennial focus group earlier in the week, which was extraordinary. Because listening to their conversation was just incredible, being a fly on that wall. But much more relaxed, and really, really important was that learning environment creates a good rapport with their instructor, with one another. Then that was more important. And the next bullet talks about the rapport. This was much more important to them in a lot of the research, but certainly in the focus group. The relationship that they had with the teacher was critical to them. So I sort of thought that they would go the other direction. And then with group work, more than one of them, actually, quite a lot of them, said that having smaller groups was more effective because they found that people would, if there was too big of a group, people would skate on it. So there we go. Who knew? Okay, so then a variety of learning strategies and frequent assessments and feedback was really critical, both in the research and certainly was seconded, particularly the feedback in the focus group. They really wanted to know on a fairly regular basis, not necessarily tied to their grades, but tied to what the instructors were seeing, and then also what their classmates were seeing. So it was important to them that they got feedback not only from the instructor, but also other class members who had worked in groups or so on and so forth. So that was, I think that's a really pretty important piece. Okay, So this is where a lot of the issues started with. And there's a lot of information about parenting strategies and how maybe parents, myself included, failed the students in creating students that did not get everything that they wanted. The helicopter parents, the educational interference, the infamous participation medals, all of that kind of stuff, and the instantaneousness of technology, and made them impatient, made them a little bit entitled and narcissistic. And honestly, the focus group, there's lots of research behind this, but the focus group, they didn't actually argue with this. They didn't actually support any of this. The participation medals, etc. They were like, didn't work. And in fact, they actually talked about that type of stuff as really hurting them because it made them not trust the person from whom they were getting the feedback, if it was all one-sided, or if it was sort of the verbal equivalent of a participation medal. They understood that it wasn't actually authentic, and therefore they didn't trust the deliverer of that information. So I thought that was interesting. Even given all of this, particularly I was surprised with the entitlement piece. They are so much more purpose-driven, impact-driven, civically minded, global citizens than any generation around. And I attribute that to the fact that they can see the globe. When I was a kid, we didn't even have a television until I was 17 years old because we lived up in the mountains. There was no reception. So I didn't see the world outside of my own community. These students have grown up from the moment they were born, seeing things, Google Maps and news sites and Facebook with all sorts of information on there. And it's created this impact that students are getting degrees in community studies, in things like that. Really extraordinary. I think this has been changing a lot, and people talk about it as a bad thing, the importance of work-life balance. I think that we talk about it as they're not going to miss their kids' baseball game in order to stay at work. And we talk about that as a bad thing. I think it's a great thing. They're just being a whole lot more realistic about the fact that, like some of our parents and the baby boomers on the tail end of that, that shift has happened, and I think it's a really good shift in all sorts of ways. And I think that there's lots of evidence to support that. Their instant gratification, multitasking, creates both issues for them as well as supports where they're going and what they're doing. They're very collaborative oriented and team oriented. They'd much rather work in a group rather than on individual projects. And this feeds the multitaskers, and the multitaskers feeds this. It's significantly easier if 10 of them do 10 math problems and then teach each other. So each one takes one and then they teach it to them. This has been supported in research all over the place. If you, sorry about that. If you go to things like, Whistling Vivaldi, they'll talk about the research. Great book, by the way, if you haven't read it, it's fabulous. So it really feeds on the idea that students can work together and get farther. They are highly educated. They are going for more and more degrees, higher levels of degrees. They're entrepreneurial. They're not going to work for folks that they don't want to work for. And I think that feeds into their practicality. And they're significantly more liberal than the rest of the previous generations, as well as more progressive and secular. We're going to go through each one of these bullet points on the right in a little bit more detail and what that sort of means to us. Any questions or comments?
Can you forgive me? I have a quick question about the 5 R's of teaching millennials. I didn't catch the R for number 5. It's killing me. Thank you. Okay.
You're welcome. And remember, this is online. I think Topher probably has already added it, knowing Topher. He's a little bit
Okay.
John Scottish.
Thank you.
But yeah, so it's research-based. And I think that evidence-based shows up in education a lot. Okay. So the first bullet was the project impact civic-oriented, global. And again, that goes back to designing assignments, such as the kid who I was working with who wanted to drop out of school, that matter to the student, and not just doing the same thing. I remember I actually have a millennial student, my son, and I remember when he was younger, he kept failing spelling tests because the teacher had never updated. It was on things like capitalizing proper nouns. And this is, a very early grade and minor issue, but I think it is illustrative of where we go. And sometimes as teachers we get a little bit busy, or we just don't think it matters as much. But he kept failing his spelling test because he didn't know words like Reebok, because nobody has Reebok tennis shoes anymore. He didn't realize that was a proper noun. So they have to continually looking at things. Is this a global issue, and is it impacting our world now? Are we thinking about it? If we're talking about, anything, look at stuff that's really going on. These are the real-world issues that the focus group said that they would be very interested in tackling in pretty much any subject, whether it's history or civics or anything, English. And so you can see that none of them listed, baseball or what have you, which I was actually sort of surprised about, because I didn't say look at the real world issues. I just said, what issues would you be interested in talking about or exploring further? Okay, so any questions about their civic mindedness, global mindedness? Anyone out there who is a teacher or instructor now that thinks that they have an idea of how they could impact or they can change their curriculum to become more impact-driven, purposeful? If you come up with ideas, you can chat them in or speak up. Either way, we're totally fine. Okay, so work-life balance. I think this begins at school. I think that it's really critical. There's enormous volumes and volumes and volumes of research about the efficacy of homework. And I think that at school we need to look at that. How is that working? But we also critically need to teach students about time management. This is not something that comes normal and healthy, and help. And if you're a community college instructor, you may have students in your classroom who are 18 to 60, and all along that spectrum they may not have time management skills, goal setting, efficiency. Teach students about real life. Get them out of their classroom into how to go out into the classroom and really engage in life. You can give them extra credit. I know a lot of high schools in my area are now saying, okay, you have to go to two things outside of your normal world, like an art show or a music show, because it then teaches them about cultures that are outside of themselves. And I think that's really critical. Soft skills they help with work-life balance because they teach people how to be better employees. We do have a e-seminar training on soft skills. The first link that you can see here is a link to our actual website, and this is to the actual YouTube video you can go there as well. Okay, any comments or questions about this? Any way that you could embed it into your classrooms, or that you already are? Okay. Instant gratification, multitasking, my favorite thing. I thought so much with students about doing more than one thing at once. I think that I don't actually think multitasking is healthy. I don't think it's smart. And actually, down at the bottom, and it shows links as well, brain literally is physically impossible for a brain to do two things at once. So basically, if you're multitasking with 2, 3, 4 things, you're really just switching back and forth between the activities, and you're not giving any one of the tasks your full attention. Again, I think that students don't know this, and they need to be taught this and shown the math, the science behind it. So I think that would be really helpful. Teaching mindset. Has anybody heard of the book Mindset or the research behind that?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so Mindset was developed by Carol Dweck down at Stanford University, and she was looking for something completely and utterly different. I think it's a fabulous book. I would highly recommend anyone that either has children, particularly hopefully if they're young, because you can just eliminate so many issues as they get older, but also if you're teaching students, because there's two types of mindsets. One of them is a fixed mindset. So this is how big my brain is, and anything that doesn't fit into this is I'm going to have to discredit. So they don't take challenges. They don't like challenges. They don't spend a lot of time on homework because it disproves how smart they are. All sorts of crazy things. It's amazing. The opposite of a fixed mindset is a growth mindset, where students really relish the idea of a challenge because they understand that the harder they try, the more effort they put into it, the better they become at a task and the more successful they are. I would highly recommend the book. There's also online resources all over the place now. There's YouTube videos, all sorts of different things. I would recommend showing it to your students so that they can really understand it, because again, once you understand it, you can't understand. You can't forget it. I work with a school down at San Jose High School, with a group down there, and I taught them. Actually, I didn't. Let me switch gears. I went there in order to work with the faculty, on ways to increase participation of underrepresented students in STEM and STEAM careers. So we were down there, and there was, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 teachers who would meet, and we would meet once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. And we met in a classroom of a teacher who was in the group, but we met in her classroom because she required any students who had detention from her, that they serve their detention in her classroom so that she could make sure that they're doing what is missing, or if they have questions they can ask her, so on and so forth. So over the period of about maybe 2 months, more and more teachers dropped out, and more students started giving themselves detention. And now, 2 years later, we have a group, same group, no faculty members, well, one who's the monitor of it, the supporter of it, and we have about 21 students who they go out and they teach the teachers about mindset, about stereotype threat, about self-efficacy, about micro-messages, so on and so forth. And in addition to that, they now know it, and they teach each other about this. They have equity weeks. They have they're making a documentary film about women and men going into careers that are non-traditional by gender. They're doing all sorts of stuff. And the students took this all on. The oldest one, I think, is 18 at the most. I think she might have just turned 18. So really important to teach the students about it. It certainly has, I mean, these are some pretty extraordinary students, but they've certainly increased their participation of some of the it's an IB school, but not all the students are IB for the first time this year. So they've really increased the ways that they have by teaching each other about this. And one of the topics, they made posters about a lot of the ideas like mindset and multitasking, and they have them up all over the school to teach each other that, hey, this doesn't actually work, or this does work, or about this. I think it's a great idea. They're amazing kids. So teach your kids, your students. Okay, any questions about that or anything else that I've talked about, because I didn't really stay on point there much? All right. So the next one is collaboration and being team-oriented. One of the schools that we've worked with here up in Northern California, one of the teachers has created almost 100% team-driven assessment in his classroom. The students are in teams and they work together And if one fails, they all fail. They all have to succeed together. They're responsible for teaching one another. They're responsible for, moving students along together. And at first I thought, wow, the students are going to hate that, because we all know students who, either from our perception or not, quote unquote, aren't going to make it or aren't going to put in the effort or so on and so forth. The faculty member has definitely devised, they don't all have to get 100% on their papers, but they all have to participate in the papers. They don't have to, get 100% on the subject, but they have to show progress. So I thought that was an interesting thing. There's ample evidence that when students are able to make decisions, they are more apt to follow up and be successful in completing the tasks that they set. And this can happen in a classroom. So what do you want to study next, or what part of this topic do you want to actually address? What do you want to write the papers on? So it doesn't have to be just a CTE classroom, it could be academic as well. And then also, of course, within the group. Decision making within the group is important, but from an equity standpoint, you have to also be careful that it's not the same student making those decisions. It's not the same, whether it's by gender or ethnicity or what have you, folks are not getting marginalized or entitled with making decisions, so on and so forth. So one of the things that was important is to make the data accessible during times that the classroom is not necessarily accessible. So many of the students talked about making sure that both the content and also the resources were available at night or on the weekends via websites or links, things like that. And that was more the technology that they were talking about, things like Khan Academies, where they could go in and they could, are you all familiar with Khan Academies? Anybody not?
I've heard of it.
Okay, just in case if there's anybody that hasn't, it's a group that they go in and they make videos, and there's, I don't know, literally thousands and thousands of videos on science or math or English or, just a whole range of different things. And the students can go in there and sort of relearn a topic, and they can watch that same video over and over and over and over if they're struggling until they're no longer struggling. So that's the kind of technology that students want to have access to. They also talked about being able to look at sort of more hands-on technology. One of them in the focus group this week mentioned, instead of doing dissections, being able to do it over and over and over and over through a web-based sort of model, things like that. So being able to really go at their own pace, make the data accessible, the data and the information accessible to them throughout, and letting them sort of direct things. So one of the things that I think this group is sometimes lacking by my parenting of giving up participation model trophies, etc., is how do we have a discussion and make decisions, and can we model that? And that was one of the things in the classroom that can happen in the classroom, is how do we really model a really good decision-making strategy, or how do we have a discussion that where everybody gets to participate? So these are from the Science House, which is in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And this is one of the techniques that is used in a classroom, used in classrooms, science classrooms in Minnesota now. When they're having a discussion, and this is of course just one idea, there's 1,000 ideas, but everybody gets these little Science House chips, and so that people don't monopolize the conversation. You have to have one of these in order to participate in the discussion, but you can't have any of them by the end of the discussion. So you have to participate, but you can't over-participate. And I think that was kind of a cool thing. On the back of it, it says, if it were easy, it wouldn't be hard, which I thought was pretty humorous. So these are given out to teachers throughout Minnesota. It's kind of one idea. Another of the ideas was computer-generated discussion prompts. So John gets called up, and then Emma, and then Bob, and then Topher, and so on and so forth. So each person comes up automatically. One of the things that we keep running into over and over in education is students who do research and write papers or science or whatever it is, history, not great resources. And I think that's something that we really need to teach students, because they don't actually know. And I remember being in graduate school, and my graduate school instructor saying, you can't use that resource. And he had to explain it to me why. It was because it was a conservative resource, which I don't necessarily means I can't use it, but I should be aware of, whether it's leaning conservative, leaning liberal, what have you. Students need to understand that type of spell. Building trust, we kind of already talked about the importance of it, but I think actually yesterday I did a workshop at the Veterans Conference, and we talked a lot about building trust and authenticity. And I think students of all ages recognize authenticity, and it's one of the fastest ways, I think, to diminish trust is by being inauthentic, or not necessarily telling lies, but just, well, we all know what that means. And then, of course, keeping our skills and our knowledge up to date, and encouraging our students to do the same. They need to understand when programs change or when new textbooks come out, if there's different information. They need to understand the changing political climate and how that's going to affect literally everything that we do. It's a much different world now than it was 6 months ago, and regardless of what anybody's political leanings are, if we all of a sudden go back to, if the Trump administration follows up on creating this huge infrastructure revitalization, what have you, work, that's going to really matter. If they reduce the regulations, that's going to matter in science. So there's all these things that we really need to actually know, and that the students need to know, and they need to learn how can we be analytical about it and really look at it and not just have a knee-jerk reaction, which I think is critical, particularly, well, for all education, but also in CTE. We sometimes feel like that's not as relevant to us, but I think it might be. Okay, so highly educated. I think that students it's important to recognize that more students are going towards, they're being pushed into higher and higher and higher forms of education, higher degrees, master's degrees, so on and so forth. And I've included down here from Dr. Kevin Fleming's work from Telos Educational Services, a video which I think is really important. I think students could see it for sure. I think parents, if you have parents who are, my kids, everybody's going to college, a 4-year university, this is really important information for them. It talks about the wide variety of careers that are out there that do not require a 4-year degree. According to Harvard a few years ago, at the most, only 32% of occupations require a 4-year degree. And yet, every time I go to a school, it's like all kids are going to college. It's all, so on and so forth. But in addition, this video talks about the financial incentive or disincentive of higher ed degrees. Kevin has more than one master's degree and one PhD, and huge amounts of financial debt now. So he knows from where he speaks, and he's also done a lot of research on it. So I'd highly recommend this video. And again, teaching students about the mindset of yet and what they can learn and when, and I don't ever want to dissuade a student from going on into education. That's never, ever, ever my goal. But I do want them to make concrete, reasonable decisions, and I also really want them to persevere even when they fail. In fact, failure is probably good, right? I mean, we hear it all the time. It always sounds like nonsense, but it is actually good. Failing and getting back up teaches us persistence. It teaches us resilience. It teaches us, our own strength, and I think that's really critical. And I think that in every classroom we can raise the bar, but also have. We were talking yesterday about stackable certificates, and I think those are kind of great because they allow students to create, to do some work and get a certificate, and then from that they earn a little bit of self-efficacy for themselves. I can do this. Look at this. I just did this. And I think that's what tests are and should be sort of remarketed as. Testing in a class should be, where were you before? Where are you now? Where are you going? So I think that those are it's really critical. But I think that all students can improve, and I think they should have the power of doing it, of raising the bar, knowing that we support them and that we think that they are capable of hitting the bar, but that we have really clearly delineated steps that they get there, and the intermediary skills identified so that they don't feel like it's such a huge task. Whether it's writing your thesis or a 10-page paper in your medical classes, it doesn't make any difference. If you haven't done it before, it's a daunting proposition. Any questions or comments or anything else? All right, chatty Cathy's. All right, next one is entrepreneurial skills. These students, by and large, are, I think part of this is because they're facing so much uncertainty. They're much more entrepreneurial than generations in the past. Certainly the baby boomers, their anticipation was they're going to go get a job, they're going to have that job for 40 years, and they're going to retire with a gold watch. The next generations are like, yeah, I'm going to get a job, and I'm going to switch many times over, and I will continue from there. These students are not only seeing a changing workforce, but they're also being encouraged to do things on their own, and they have more skills for that. One of the folks that I went, I can't even remember what it was. Oh, it was probably during the entrepreneurial program that I put on for the students in the Central Valley. There was an educator there, and he requires all of his students to identify and initiate an entrepreneurial opportunity sometime during the semester. And he gave a whole host of different examples. It was during the time that the vaccination versus anti-vaccination conversation really started. And so he went online and he created a vax and an anti-vax t-shirt. They sell from the same website. So he created one website, you type in anti-vax and you get the anti-vax one. You type in the vax and you get those t-shirts. And he actually was selling t-shirts. Who knew? He had one student who he had go out and buy a bucket and some window washing material, and this student went out there and created a website and a business plan and was off to the races within 3 days on window washing. So it can be literally anything. Photos, if you have a student who's really likes taking photographs, put them online, sell them for $10 a picture or $40 a picture, depending on, what have you. So yeah, I think it's really important that we recognize that our students are going to be much more entrepreneurial and then encourage them and teach them those skills. Whether it's in a business class or an automotive class or construction, whatever it is, an enormous number of those folks are going to be their own bosses at some point. Okay, so another technique is having speakers in your classroom. The younger the better, or the ones, if you teach older students, that sort of look like your students, both in terms of age, gender, and ethnicity. It's important. It's important because that also encourages their self-efficacy and the belief that they can actually do this by living vicariously through the folks that they see. It really helps. So And then finally, one way to get students to really buy into your class, but also to understand what it means, is to have them be the teachers. Make them create a class, an outline for the day. What are they going to teach them? Are you going to teach about woodworking or new brakes for these cars or whatever it is that you're in, green energy, solar panels, I don't care what it is, and have them do the research, create the outline, so that they understand the full breadth of what it means to be an entrepreneur. I see a chat in here. Interested in examples of successful student shared decision making in the context of assignments or so I would say that so in the classrooms that we have worked with, that I've worked with over the last few years, certainly the San Jose High School, their decision making of, they've created the entire STEAM coalition curriculum that they take out to middle schools, elementary schools, middle schools, and into their own high school, along with the teachers, teaching the teachers. So I think that's one of them. I also have worked with students, I can't think of what the high school is, but they are the teachers create the entire curriculum with the professors, and then begin to teach it on a day-to-day basis. So each student takes a different portion, that they're not overwhelmed, but they're creating in that. I want to say it's Calusa High School, but if you want more, if you want some specific information, I can absolutely put a list together and put it up on the website. I think that was Bob who asked that question. Is that you, Bob? If that's what you're looking for, I'd be happy to create that. Okay, great, I'll do that. Awesome, that's a really great idea. But there's a whole host of them all around, quite frankly. I have not compiled it into one list, but I will. Okay, anything else? All right. All right, so this group of students, again, is practical. We talked about group work before. The reason that they like it is because it's faster. This initial idea was presented to me sort of when I was reading Whistling Vivaldi, and they talked about the perception that Asian students are smarter than other students, particularly in math and sciences. And so in his book, he talks about another researcher who was trying to figure out how it is that perception exists and whether or not it's actually true, because it's a little hard to really believe that a group of humans on the planet are just simply better at or less good at. So, but what they did is they found that, first of all, the Asians that this man followed, and he literally, the book is hilarious. He talks about this guy going around and literally just following students around and seeing what they did and how they did it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And what he found was that, by and large, the Asian students that he was following work in groups, and they will, what I was talking about earlier, they'll take their 10 math problems, each person will do one of them, or if there's 20 students, two of them will work on a problem, whatever it is, they divvy them out, and then they teach one another. We know through research that mastery, when you can teach someone, you're exhibiting mastery and you're much more likely to retain the information. So they figured out that group work is faster. They're not actually smarter than me as a Caucasian, but they do work better. They also, the same piece of information, the same piece of research, it's out of the book again with Vivaldi, which is on stereotype threats, identified that African American students were the least likely to work in groups, and that was one of the reasons that they were struggling at this particular university, which was, I think, the University of Michigan. Fascinating book, really great read, super funny, if you're interested in it. So So teaching students that group work is easier and better, and talking about mastery and teaching one another, so on and so forth. And that really goes back also to making the students the teachers. They have to have topic mastery. They just have to. So group work is faster. Get them to teach each other. Increase their mastery of a topic subject. And again, they're going to use technology. So as we go forward, whether that is in automotive or allied health or early childhood education, I guarantee that for almost every topic, there is a YouTube video up there that they can go up and look at it. So they're going to be able to acquire this information. And based on that, we need to make sure that what we're sending home for homework or identifying is not just busy work, that we are really clear that this is going to further their information, their knowledge, or solidify their knowledge. And we need to discuss that with the students as we are handing out homework or as we are identifying homework. This is why we're doing it. So it goes back to that very beginning of they need rationale reasons, the 5 R's. What's the rationale behind it, and what's the relevance to it? And I think that is really critical. Okay, anything? Anyone? Alrighty. Okay, so liberal, progressive, and secular. This is from SurveyMonkey, which I thought was absolutely fascinating. I love charts, I love graphs, I love politics, I love the elections. This on the left-hand side up here is the actual outcome of the election, but when you reduce it down to just millennials, this is the outcome of the election. Really, really different ballgame. But what is it going to do? Does it matter? How is it going to change education? I think that remains to be seen, but I think we all have to be sort of cognizant of the fact that it's a changing world. And boy, I don't know what it's going to, I don't know how much more it's going to change, but I was shocked when I saw this. And then there's students, millennial students are less likely to attend religious services, less likely to identify that as religion as being important or part of their decision-making processes. And because of that, they are going to move away from participation and support of organizations. And again, I don't know how this is going to play out in education as we go. I think it'll probably play out more with students who are younger, and certainly maybe more with in academic courses where they're looking at civic engagement and things like that. So, but I thought it was pretty darn interesting, that's for sure. Okay. So they are nomadic, they are adventuresome, they are creative. So take them out of the classroom. We have a member of our committee, and she will actually be speaking at the next conference in December or November she wrote her dissertation on this last bullet here, or the bullet. If you change where you teach, you change how you teach. And so she's going to be talking about that, like what you do when you shift your frame, you shift the way you teach. She talks about teaching she creates gardens in schools and has students and teachers go out into the garden and teach there, regardless of what the topic is. But you can do the same thing with field trips. Take your students on tour, ask them analytical questions, and how, if you're talking about, let's say, construction technology, how is the construction on your campus different during different periods, or why would it be this versus that, so on and so forth. So it really doesn't matter what topic you're teaching. It only matters that we are getting it out and exploring the world outside of our classroom so that students understand the relevance. Again, it goes back to the relevance of it all. I know you all probably go to enough PD to fill your world. I think it's a really great opportunity. There's a lot of great professional development. JSPAC is an amazing course. It's also a really great thing for students to do. If you can bring your students to a conference, I would highly recommend it. If you can get students to work at conferences, it creates leadership opportunities for them. Our conference, the CCC-AOE, those are all 3 CTE focused conferences, and of course there's the CTE conference that just passed. But getting your students to participate in those as leaders is a great way for them to learn something, and that all of the planners would be happy to have your students participate. So I'd highly recommend it. And if anybody's interested in participating in Sacramento for CCC, AOE, and JSAC, call me, and then down in Palm Springs area in the fall. Anyway, okay, so develop student sharing policies, and this is actually literally sharing the students as opposed to, it's not a linear track that students are taking anymore. They go in and out of school. It's an open entrance, open exit. They can come and go if they want to. They're coming back after getting a 4-year degree and coming back and getting a certificate. They are, attending one community college, then another one. They are, right now, we are working on ways for community colleges where a student has gone to 3 different community colleges, but only the terminal college gets out. So we're actually talking at a policy level of that. Give credit for life experiences, veterans, travel, employment, family participation, anything. Okay. And then as soon as that's done, we get to come up with Generation Z. That's generation. I didn't even know it was called Generation Z. So that comes afterward, after the millennials. Before I go on, any comments or questions? Okay. I'm going to ask that Topher send out a Survey Monkey. It is, I think, 5 questions, including what else do you want from us and your name. So really not a challenge, but we'd really love to get information back from you where we go from here. We've created a series of webinars. We have the conference. We do workshops. So please, by all means, tell us what else you'd like to hear from us researching on. That was a really awkward sentence. Anyway, anything else? Anyone?
No, thank you very much. It was really interesting.
Good. I'm so glad. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact myself or Christopher at any time. And please fill out the Survey Monkey. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Did you see that question, Elizabeth, that just popped up about the age range for Generation Z?
Yep, I'm getting it right now. Oops, bad typing, but there it is. God, can you imagine what we're to talk about the next generation? They're only 17 years old. So, Topher?
Yes.
Did you, can you send the survey link out? I think I sent it to you as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, awesome.
And I will get the link for the PowerPoint for the person who asked in 1
Okay.
second.
Cool. Entering the big zone. Okay. Well, I'm moving up now. No more video. All right, Topher, I'm hanging up.
Okay. Did you send me the thing for the survey? I'm going through my email.
The link?
Yeah.
I thought I had.
Oh, there we go. I found it. Thank you.
Awesome. I had another person who said they couldn't get the PowerPoint. Weird. Millennials. Have you got it posted online yet?
It is.
Okay.
I put the link up there. It's on our webinar webpage. So if they go to jspec.org, on the home page is a link to the 2017 free webinars.
Awesome.
And so all you have to go, it says working with millennials, go to details. And if you go to that page, it's part of the attachment.
Oh my God, my fingers are just not working today. He's back. Free webinars.
And I will.
And details. Awesome.
And
Okay.
Posted it in the chat as well, the link to it.
Okay. Oh, perfect. I think that they are a challenge. All right. Bye-bye, Christopher. Thank you so much for everything.
No problem.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.